Well, welcome everybody to the Broker Bartenders. Tom Livingston alongside with my partner Ryan Clarke in Charleston, South Carolina. I'm in Denver, Colorado, the Mile High City. So it's been a long time since we've done one of these Broker Bartender podcasts. We used to do it on Instagram Live all the time. And but now we're kind of stepping our game up with this whole thing a little bit. So excited to get the ball rolling again. Ryan, how are you, brother?
I'm doing well. It's been it's nice to get one of these back going again. Last time you and I did one of these, other than the Top Gun 2 premiere in 2021, was during COVID. And I think our last guest was Annie Lemon, if I remember correctly.
With the Annie Angle is what we
With
had. Yeah.
When the she Annie would come Angle. On,
so
yeah.
So we'll have to and we'll, bring different people around and different guests and have different perspectives. And, so maybe we can get her back on. Since then, she's had a baby and gorgeous girl. Mm-hmm. And so we'll definitely look to see if we can get, get the band back together, so to speak, on a few of these things. So
we've got to get the band back together. Leah's back in insurance. We can get her back on. Who else did we had? We had Catherine Bardick, if I remember correctly.
Yep. Catherine was on. Yeah, we tried to get Brennan, but he put Catherine in his place, which was okay by me. It was fine by me. She did great. Yes. And she made she had a fantastic tequila cocktail that she came up with, which was really good. So the whole premise about the Broker Bartenders thing too is kind of what our kind of shtick thing is that we come up with a cocktail or a drink or whatever component. And what we'll do when we have guests on going down the road or in the future, we'll just kind of, hey, what's your favorite cocktail and why? Mm-hmm. And then we'll just kind of go from there. So, and we can even do that today. So I know you're drinking Corona, which seems to be a staple
for licensing purposes.
Yes. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah. Is that a licensing thing? Yeah. Because now we're going to have to try to figure out how we're going to do, can we mention liquors and, what's it, I'll have to kind of figure that out.
Yeah.
And if you're an attorney, please chime in with any information on any of that kind of stuff, so we don't get our asses sued right out of the chute.
Probably a good idea.
Yeah.
So no intention meant, no, we neither own nor represent that these products are anything other than delicious.
Correct. So we'll have to reference our attorney to make sure that we're good on that. Do we have an attorney?
I don't think South Carolina, man. We're an attorney state. I'm sure I can ask somebody.
Yeah. I don't even think we have an attorney. We probably need to get one of those. Okay. So with that said,
situation.
So what is your favorite cocktail and why?
Wow. Old fashioned.
Yeah.
For sure. Probably the first drink I was ever made that wasn't whiskey Coke or 7 and 7 or something like that. You get those drinks when you're younger of let me just mix whatever's there and whatever's there in college. I definitely remember those. Rum and Coke, whiskey Coke, lots of Coke and other alcohols. I think I had Coke and vanilla vodka once. I don't recommend, but it was college and we did what we could with what we had. But old fashioned seemed like that. There was enough fruit with the orange and sweetness with the sugar in it to kind of be that halfway house between like a raw martini that's basically just chilled vodka and the college basicness that I had come from that was just pure sugar and hangover. So far and away, if you're asking me to go out to a fancy restaurant and I'm getting something besides a beer, which is my go-to, or a glass of wine, other go-to, old fashioned for sure.
Yeah, I agree. And that's been mine. And that's been mine for a while. I was a martini guy, early on doing martinis and kind of doing that kind of stuff too. But, even when, bartending, it was always, and then when you bartend, you're just doing beers and shots and whatever and all that kind of stuff too. But old fashioned seemed, and I didn't catch on to that until later on. And then I started getting more crafty with it as far as like recipes and, smoking them and, adding like a rosemary sprig in there and getting all fancy, schmancy with that. But yeah, I really like, old fashioned for sure. I actually just got a golf polo shirt that's got little old fashions. I should have
Ooh,
wore that today, but I don't know why I
that would have
didn't.
been the move. Episode 2 or
Episode 2.
1.1, because this is
Yes,
like
cocktail
0.1.
attire. Yep,
Yes.
that'll be
Do you
one of
remember
the
the
subjects.
first do you remember the first drink you ever learned to make professionally besides like, whiskey Coke?
I would probably say that wasn't like super complicated. I'm trying to remember if that was a Long Island iced tea
Ooh.
or if it was like a margarita. I can't remember. I think it might have been a Long Island iced tea.
Did
Because
they
then you're
teach
just
you
because
on the
that's a
first go with the grab all the bottles at once
yeah, and
and
you're just
flip them?
dumping them all in there at once. And then some genius came up with all that already pre-mixed in one bottle. So
Yes.
it was like a Long Island iced tea mix, which
Which
sucked. It was horrible,
and hurt your teeth.
right? But
My teeth hurt just thinking about those.
I will say I'd never used tequila.
No, because that's a different drink. And I'm trying to remember what that it's a um
A Long Island iced
what
tea
is
with
that?
tequila, and now I can't. Yeah, but it was always just the vodka, gin, the rum. So it was all the white liquors,
All the white
and
liquors.
then it doesn't have iced tea in it at all.
No.
It's got the sweet and sour than the Coke. So yeah, I never put tequila, but I would see people make it with tequila, and I'm like, yeah, that I can't imagine that tastes any good.
You don't taste it. I've had a few
Yep,
that way. Yeah, because it's all just kind of blending together at that point
yep.
and going down quickly.
Off to the real estate side of stuff. So now as we are July 31, 2024 air date or record date for this
Film date.
film date. We are just roughly 18 days away from all these changes that are coming down in the real
Yeah.
estate industry through the NAR settlement. I won't even say it's the lawsuits. I'll just say it's the settlement
Settlement.
that
Yes.
is dictating all these changes for that. So, yeah, so all that's coming up. And I think a lot of people are, kind of trying to figure out exactly how this is going to roll. A lot of people are freaking out about the whole thing. And, what's going to be the correct way to do things as stated through NAR. I know there's a lot of people that are trying to circumvent ways to do things without that, and that could potentially be not good. So as we come up to, just a few weeks away from that, kind of what are your thoughts on, kind of where things kind of sit with this and, what this is going to look like for, for agents going forward?
It's interesting. So I went to called a mastermind here in Charleston, South Carolina, with some agents from around the city from a couple of various brokerages, and we were talking about this. It was interesting. Everybody's kind of varying take on it from what they've learned from Google and Instagram University, which is where we're getting a lot of our information or misinformation, as it were. The general consensus is most of us are not really all that worried about it. What we are concerned with is just how to handle this correctly so that we're not hurting our clients by trying to help our clients. So, example, I don't know if you've heard about this, but I don't know what the legality is. There's a major brokerage, probably the second largest brokerage in the country. I saw a reel the other day. They are advising their agents not to offer a buyer agency outright or immediately, but to allow the buyers and buyers agents to request one in the opening offer. So as your first element of negotiation to ask for it. So by not defining what it is, you're removing yourself from the antitrust concerns.
Mm-hmm.
My worry about that is, I think your market, having come from your market and now my market, there tends to be we certainly can't say a fixed or standard range of commission, but there is a generally accepted market rate, and it floats typically between two numbers. If I remember correctly, in Denver, it tended to float between let's see, I don't think we're supposed to talk in percents. I think it was floated between 2.8 pennies or 2.8 goats and 3.0 goat. Yeah, there you go. Apples. 2.8 apples and 3.0 apples. Here in Charleston, we tend to see that we float between 2.5 and 3.0 apples, with 2.5 apples becoming more normal than it was a few years ago, with the prices having gone up here, which does make sense. I've long said I think we're headed towards a 5 apples world from a 6 apples world.
Right.
So one of the things that was the concern was if we go down that path and we more often than not see an offering of 2.5 apples, what happens when I, as a agent who may or may not be of sound ethics, make an offer on your listing, Tom? In your mind and in your seller's mind, you have in your head a number of 2.5 apples that you expect me to ask for, or that you would have offered in another world. But now I give you and your clients a full price offer with 3 apples as my ask. Average price here is 600,000. That's, it's a couple apples. That's a lot of apples. That's a whole orchard of apples. In difference between if you had just offered me X and defined it, now I get to ask for it. I think my concern as a listing agent would be that all of a sudden, am I quibbling over somebody else's payment outside, but within the framework of the contract, because our commission rate, our apples, are not supposed to be a part of the discussion.
Right.
We've now introduced it as part of the discussion. So what if I get 2 offers? I get an offer from you with 600,000 asking me for 2.5 apples. And Catherine Bardick sends me an offer on on the same listing, 600,000, all their terms equal, asking for 2.5 apples. What do I do? Do I ask you to take half an apple less? Do I go back to you and say, hey, you offered me first. Tom, you've been great to work with. I love your communication. If you can reduce your apple ask, we got a deal.
Right.
So I really like you. We have now introduced apples into the conversation where apples don't belong. I think it's going to be a bumpy road to figure all that out. I think that's going to be the weird part for the first couple of months. In the end, though, I think it normalizes. I think nothing really changes for most of us. I firmly believe in, and the math shows, the 80-20 rule in real estate, and he goes so far as to say the 90-10 rule plays of 90% of all production is done by 10% of all the licensed real estate agents. They tend to have a business model that serves one way, or a way that they have found success with, and they are not likely to change it for you or me.
Right.
So if they keep offering apples because that's how they know the math tends to work, I don't know.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it all rolls out in the beginning. And I'm sure there's going to be all kinds of, people are it's going to be, a learning curve for everybody and how this is going to go down. And people are going to be tripping, over themselves, right out of the chute, just to kind of, get this figured out and how it gets rolling with that, because this is new for everybody on how this is going to get done. So,
it's interesting for sure.
Yeah. I think it's, at the end of the day, it's about those group of agents that work together to get this figured out, right? So it's not going to be such a battle and make it, such a big deal. If they communicate, and just communicating on on it and working together to make sure that you're doing the best thing for your client at the end of the day is what it's all about. And
100%.
so I think there's going to be some people that just kind of, hey, we're rolling along like we always have. We just don't have it. The apples aren't represented in the MLS. And, we just have to have a buyer broker agreement in place prior to going and looking at any properties.
What are your thoughts on that?
Other,
That's honestly the biggest change because to me anyways, when you really look at it, I don't see a whole lot of functional, actual trackable change happening to the consumer. Anyways, the house that was 600,000 today is probably going to be 600,000 tomorrow, save for appreciation and such things. I really don't think that on August 16th versus August 17th, there's going to be some massive drop or acceleration in the market and home values, right?
Right.
And the 90% of the production is still going to come from 10% of the agents. So what's really going to change? Not a whole lot. If you one phone call that we have to make. So I have to call you and say, hey, Tom, just showed your listing, or I'm about to show your listing at 123 Apple Street. What's the commission rate that you're offering? So we're hearing a lot of different ways that a lot of agents and are being guided by their broker or by the state on how to handle such things. It's interesting. The general consensus of the top agents that I've been talking to, at least here in the Charleston area, we're not going to make the call before we show the house. We're just going to go show the house. I didn't look at the commission rate before I showed the house now, or a week ago, or a month ago, or a year ago. I didn't really look at it. So it's not really a determining
factor. You knew one existed.
I knew one existed. Yes. 100%.
Yep.
I also know that just about anything in a real estate transaction is figure out a bull. And the last thing I'm ever going to do is get in the way and insert myself into the deal. I make my income over the series of transactions, not on one transaction.
Right.
There's going to be somebody that's going to, spike the punch for all of us. Unfortunately, there always is, but I don't know, man. I really don't see a whole lot of major change.
Yeah. I think, some people have had buyer brokers agreements in place from the beginning anyway. Some people have been, well, we'll just kind of cross that bridge. And when we get to a property we're going to offer on, and then we'll just kind of put all the paperwork together and kind of go from there. So, but now we'll have to have that in place before they can look at any properties or do any kind of showings or anything like that. So, for those that have kind of done it anyway, then there's really not, hey, I've always, when I'm meeting with a potential buyer client, these are the forms I need to have you fill out before, just to kind of get started. And, there's always that reference to like going to the doctor, right? You go into the doctor's office and you sit down and, hey, something's wrong with me. I need to see the doctor. Okay. And then you get the clipboard from the receptionist, right? Hey, when you get a chance, I just need you to fill out all these forms, before we can get you in, or they make you fill those out online prior to showing up to your appointment. So it's really it's the same thing. It's really no different on that. So once you have those forms filled out and signed, then you get to walk through the door to Willy Wonka's factory and you get to see all the goodies.
Yeah.
Right. So it's kind of the same. That's the way that's been done forever. Right. So you've signed everything that you need to sign before we can even get started. So I think, obviously now that's going to be the way it is going forward, because that's going to be a requirement.
Yeah.
To do that. And then there's variations to this that we are hearing from, other companies. I hear things about, well, Zillow's going to have a like a 3-day pass kind
Mhm.
of, hey, you sign this, you sign up for 3 days or the weekend or whatever to show properties. And then that's basically how they're going to do that. I still haven't, I don't know what that looks like. I haven't seen it. I don't even know for sure, how that's going to roll. But, I think my thought is it's always having that discussion with your client up front,
Mhm.
right? So from the first meeting, here's how it works.
Mhm.
And setting the expectation, having the transparency, going through the process of from start to finish and how the transaction is going to go. So
Mhm.
I think if you have all that in place and you're explaining everything, I don't think there should be much of an issue for anybody.
No.
They can say, I'm not going to sign this exclusive right to buy agency agreement with you so that I can just go look at homes because I don't know for sure what
Mhm.
what the case is on that. And then we're like, well, we can't go see the house. And they're going to move on to someone else, or they're going to reach out directly to the listing agent
Mhm.
and, you know, go from there. But, then that's always the creation of, how are we looking at that then from a dual agency perspective and what the
Mhm.
listing agent is going to want to get involved with, knowing how he's going to get paid on that side of work,
Mhm.
of all the work that's involved in that. So, yeah, I mean, I've seen posts, yeah, like you said, all the social media universities on here's how it goes and here's
Mhm.
how it's going to go. And nobody knows that for sure. And we still don't know that for sure. I mean, we have an idea. I mean, they're telling us this is what it's going to be, but until we actually get the, forms of documents, from our MLSs and stuff like that on how that's gonna get written up, I don't know for sure.
Yeah. Well, I think what's interesting too is the question that came up in this roundtable that I was at last week was who's looking at any of this? So today, I call you and they say, "Hey, Tom, you're my agent. You helped me buy my house. Thinking about selling our house and buying another one. But I kind of want to see this other one because we won't sell unless we want to buy this other one. Can you show me 123 Apple Street, and that'll kind of inform how we move forward. You and I have worked together before, and this is in the now time, not in the future time, in the now time. And I call you and I say, "Hey Tom, I just want to see 123 Apple Street. I'm not sure what we want to do. Will you show it to me? Not just you, Tom Livingston, but just insert agent here. Are you making me sign anything today? Probably not.
Right,
Mathematically speaking, you're just, oh no, I know, Rye. We worked together before. Everything's cool. We're just gonna go see it. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. Maybe I have another client interested in as well. Just an informed day of learning about my market.
yep,
Okay. So let's say I do that on August 16th, August 17th. Same thing. I call you and say, you know what? Actually, I do think we want to maybe make this happen. Can you show me 456 Apple Street? You say, yeah, no problem. And you forget. Day one, you forget that you need to go sign this new thing. You and I go see this house. Are they going to put you in real estate jail
right,
for that one? Who's auditing that?
right,
Who's looking at that?
right,
Who's saying, hey, Tom, you had a showing at 456 Apple Street on August 17th from 9 to 10 a.m. Can you produce for us a signed copy of the exclusive right to buy, buyer agency, whatever you call it in your state? Can you
right,
produce a copy of that? Is the listing agent going to call you and say, hey, I'm going to make sure we're not just having randos walking through here. Do you have buyer agency? Well, no. All right, get out.
right.
I, I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's gonna be and is it a box that you check when you schedule
Mm-hmm.
the showing? Is there, and I don't even seen anything about that or what that looks like. Is there gonna be like when you go into showing time, for example,
Mm-hmm.
and you schedule a showing, is there going to be a box on there that says, I affirm that I have a signed buyer's agency agreement with my client prior to this showing or whatever. I haven't even heard anything about that, just from even scheduling a showing. Are you going to have something that you check and affirm and sign saying, yep, I sure do. And if you don't, then, what's the ramifications of that? And then you produce a buyer agency agreement after the fact, and they say, well, show me that you had that in place before you did this showing. There's the certificates that are involved that show the timestamps of when that was signed and agreed upon. And if it's after that and you get audited, then there's all these kind of different questions.
Well, there's layers to that too, right? Like, so let's pivot another way. You and I used to work leads together from Zillow. Remember when we bought those and had that Boulder area? So I'm a Zillow buyer, and I hit that contact agent button, and it routes to you, Tom Livingston. And I call you and I say, hey, Tom, I want to see this property. You say, hey, great, I'll meet you over there. You meet me over there. I meet you outside that beautiful new Corvette of yours. And you say, hey, before we walk in, need you to sign this buyer agency agreement.
Yep.
Ink, wet signature, still a viable option. So I sign that and we go walk in there. What happens if you lose it? What happens if that's not even an enforceable signature because there's no witness to it? Are you supposed to record it and say, hey, here's Ryan and here's his driver's license and a copy of it? And it's like I'm going to test drive a new BMW. These are the questions I have of that'll be kind of functional changes in existence for us.
Yeah.
But again, I still don't think a whole lot changes for the consumer outside of a few extra conversations that almost should have been happening all along about transparency and disclosure and looking through things. Because even through this process, I have learned how incorrect even, I don't want to admit online that I've made mistakes, but that many of us have made mistakes, even in our own buyer agency, who think we're doing it correctly today.
Right.
Granted, this can vary from state to state, but from what I understand of buyer agency in many states is if you and I sign that buyer agency for 2.5 apples, and then you go and see a new construction house that's offering 4 apples, and you never amended the buyer agency, technically, that 1.5 apples is not yours. It's allocated to the buyer.
Right.
I think some of us have deals that we've done that way since God only knows how long we've been in for decades.
Right.
So are we going to go back and undo all that? I closed a above market average commission a couple of months ago. I amended it, but what if I hadn't? Who's coming after me for that?
Yep. So, so in that agency agreement that you agreed upon with your Apple amount, that you can't go up. You can go down, but you can't go up. So if you have that, hey, our agency agreement says that, my commission is 2.5 apples, right? And that's what it is. You go to a property and they're offering 3.5 apples, right? You're only going to get the 2.5 apples because that's what the agreement that you had in place says.
Yeah.
So you can't go up on it, but you can go down on it. So this is just that there's a whole lot of, questions and I think this is just going to, it'll be happening for a while, once these changes go into effect, and there's going to be some clarifications and corrections and, things like that. So I think a lot of people are, hey, what if I screw up on the, right out of the chute on something like that? I don't know what that's why your broker is important to, understand, exactly what can happen if you do this wrong, right? What the situation is, what the, is it going to be like a first time warning? Is it going to be like second time is fine, third time is revocation, and you and I are slinging whiskey again, somewhere at a bar.
I think that's the $64,000 or 64,000 Apple question, right? Like what's this all gonna do and what's it gonna look like? And in that roundtable, we had a broker in charge locally who's pretty high up, had served on the forms committee here in South Carolina, and he just had so many like head shaking moments about this of like, man, this is gonna get weird. It's just gonna be weird.
Yeah.
For a while. And he said, what I see happening more honestly is that he used a funny statement. He said it's gonna feel like it's like, what do they call that when men over explain something to women? Mansplaining. He's like, I feel like we're gonna be mansplaining things to our clients wildly unnecessarily because nothing will really functionally change for them. And the really interesting insight he thought about was, how is this? And we can go down the morality and what we all think of this another time, but this is happening. Whether you and I hem and haw about it or not, it just is about to happen. One thing I learned, at least here, that I cannot do is tell my client, hey, Tom, whatever I'm offered by the seller, even if it's zero, that's what I'm going to do. I can't write that categorically. I can't have a flexible commission rate that I enforce or don't enforce. I have to change it. So then it becomes, do I start signing agency per address, per commission rate, in order to say to my client, hey, I'm not going to enforce this upon you. If I'm offered 10 billion apples, great, I get it. If I'm offered 0 apples, great, I get it. I work in the macro. I can't even say that. So that's the interesting thing as I see it. And I think the thing that everybody got wrong on this is I don't know how that protects the consumer. And maybe this is just the bump and bruise while we figure it all out. But he and I spoke after this roundtable. One thing that he and I were going back and forth on is this feels a lot like 2019 when we had the Clear Cooperation Act, when we changed the coming soon, no more pocket listings, all of that. There was this hemming and hawing in every Facebook group, from lab coat agents to real estate mastermind. Everyone's like, oh my God, the sky, it's falling. This is not going to help the consumer. This is not going to do anything to help them. This is only going to hurt all of us. How does this help? And after about 15 minutes, we all kind of forgot about it. With the exception of how many days we can say coming soon and or talk about it on Facebook and or put our sign in the ground. What really changed? Nothing.
And then with COVID and the pandemic, and then they were like, well, we'll extend it, another week, because you could only be in coming soon for 7 days. And then it was like COVID happened, and it was like, okay, well, we'll make that 14 days. And then once COVID was over, they went back to the, normal whatever and all that kind of stuff too. And I think I texted you a while ago too. I was like, hey, bud, I think this has a kind of a Y2K feel to it.
It does.
Right?
It really does.
Like this whole Y2K thing was just like, bro, if, when the clock strikes midnight, and if you haven't had all this kind of stuff set up, it's over. Right?
Yeah.
And then nothing happened.
Now, I do get some element of excitement over, I'm probably butchering the stat. I remember 32%, and I don't remember if I think it's 2026. The estimation is that we will lose 32% of licensed real estate agents by 2026. As of right now, realtors alone, there's 1.3 million. So roughly a third of those are what we're going to lose. So are we going to go from 1.3 million to 850,000 agents overnight? And what third? Because we have also learned that stat of 92% of real estate agents sell 3 houses or less per year. Is that the 32% we're losing? Are we losing the 32% that have been doing this? The ones who go on those groups and tell you on the phone, I've been doing this for 25 years. Love to tell you how long they've been doing something.
Yep.
Are those the ones we lose? Who do we lose?
Right.
I'm not going anywhere. I'm excited about hopefully an increase of 32% of my own market share just by existing. But I don't know.
Yep. Well, I think it's, you just, I'm not going anywhere, and you're just going to look. My focus is buying and selling houses and working with as many clients as I possibly can and go from there. I mean, it's really not going to be much, different than the way I've been doing it before. Really. I mean, there's been some times where, I just didn't get the buyer's agency agreement in place right away. And then you go look at 30 houses and then they're ended up at a new construction or, oh, yeah, you know what? Hey, thanks. I really appreciate all your time and effort that you put into this. And, my new girlfriend, her dad is a broker, is a realtor, and it would just get really weird if I didn't use him to buy this house for us. And so we're going to go with him. And so, there's always that kind of scenario of like, don't put yourself in a position where, you may end up like, doing exactly that. And you end up with exactly nothing. So, I guess there's always been that piece of it for me, in the back of my head is, hey, if for whatever reason, I put all this time and effort into it and they end up going a different route or with somebody else because I didn't have that agency agreement in place.
In the same breath, though, that agency agreement's never been worth the digital paper it isn't written on.
Right.
Because it's intent and all of that. And then it becomes, I need to enforce that. So is that the reputation I want locally here in my market or nationally is hopefully a higher producing agent of I'm showing you houses. Your wife, Corey, finds out that her cousin's nephew's sister's bird's dog walker just got their license and wants to get in on the business. And you say, hey, right, like happy wife, happy life. Corey says, we got to use Billy Bob over here. And I've shown you 12 houses and Billy Bob writes on one of the houses. I'm not coming after you. How does that benefit me? How does that benefit the consumer? And yes, I understand that I just lost a commission I never actually got, but isn't that kind of the risk reward of being a 1099? Use the word loosely, employee. Isn't that why we all got into business for ourselves so we can control our schedules and control our income a little bit more? I wasn't enforcing that anyways. The agents who enforced it earlier will enforce it now. The ones who didn't enforce it earlier won't enforce it now. So I think it all keeps leading back to, for the consumer, very little is going to change. Somewhere along the way, there's going to be somebody that thinks that they can maneuver the system, and that one client or that one agent's 20 clients a year are going to feel a different experience than maybe your clients or mine would. But
yeah, I'm curious to see how this, gets adjusted as this kind of rolls out. Maybe there is, and I don't know, I'm not asking you to look into a crystal ball of like what NAR is going to do or whatever this is going to, do. But, I think there might be some adjustments as they go, with this that, well, yeah, I mean, that kind of didn't kind of work out the way that we thought it was going to work out, or, I don't know. I'm just curious to see what changes or adjustments they make, as this kind of starts to roll out and people realize that, maybe this particular piece isn't a good idea, or, how people that aren't realtors with the cool R are gonna do it because they, hey, I'm not part of that association, so I don't I don't have those obligations to do that.
Yeah. Somebody's going to try and build the better mousetrap through all this. And the question will be, how successful is that? And are you just spinning your wheels at that point and maybe just go do the thing that you've done for the last X number of years and just change one form and one phone conversation? And that's it. That's what I'm hoping it is for most of us. That it is just one additional question. Hey, Tom, just showed your listing 123 Main Street. It won't inhibit the offer, but can you please tell me which commission rate you are offering on 123 Main? My clients are considering it.
It depends on your offer, Ryan. That's coming. That's going to be kind of what I think a lot of people are going to be, what's your offer? Are you offering full price? Are you offering 50,000 under asking? Those are those conversations that you need to that people need to have on, how you're going to kind of deal with that.
Yeah. It's very much going to be interesting. I'm curious how this all goes. I think there'll be more bumps and bruises by our own doing up front. I think we'll trip over our own feet on this just as an industry while we figure this out. But I think August 16th, I'm going to do stuff one way, and it's going to be almost identical the way I do it on August 17th, because the changes don't really affect how I've done most of my business, with the exception of ensuring I have that buyer agency agreement before I show the house to make sure that I'm in compliant with all standards. Now, the real question I have, because you're going to have to deal with this as well. You are in a transplant state, Colorado. I am in a transplant state, South Carolina. Charleston is enormously a transplant area. I would say 30-40% of my clients don't see the house before they walk in, because they're relocating from elsewhere, job relocation, military relocation, moving across the country, moving from cold Wyoming to nice, sunny, warm Charleston, South Carolina. Got clients actually moving from Broomfield, Colorado right now. Thank you, Jessica Lentz, for sending me another wonderful client and trusting me with your people. So they're not seeing any houses in person. I'm showing them everything virtually.
Online.
Here's my question. Do I need a buyer agency for them? They're not walking in the house. I'm taking a video of the house and I'm sending it to them. They will not step 1 foot in that house until either final walkthrough, if then. So, do I need a buyer agency for them?
Yeah.
Now, Ryan, the agent trying to protect his income, blah, 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 should have one, right? But legally, do I need one? There's no clients actually walking through the house. I don't know. Those will be the nuanced things that we figure out, because I'm going to walk into a meeting that will be on nationally, and we'll be talking to the great Jason Mitchell. I'll say, hey, man, it's great. I was showing some clients virtually the other day. Did you get a buyer agency? Well, no, because there was no one there
showing any properties. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I'm going to write that down. Yeah. I mean, these things are just going to come up, and how are you supposed to handle it?
You got to build the plane in midair sometimes, it's just, you can try and build as many things as you can, but at some point it's just throw that thing in the air and see if it'll fly. If not, fix it as you go. There is no such thing as perfection, right? You can't fix every conceivable way that this could go in action, especially when you're dealing with people. People are the variable. That's the interesting part, is that we are the variable as people, and the consumer is the variable. So, I don't know, man. It's going to be fun.
Yeah. I mean, I hope it's fun. I hope it still is fun. And, like you were talking about the, anticipation of, the amount of realtors that are going to leave the industry. And, if they find that it's, not fun for them anymore, or this is just, it's too much for them to handle, then, if we're going to lose those amount of agents, a lot of people are like, that's probably a good thing anyway. because we had an influx of those
Mm-hmm.
that were jumping in during COVID. And because they, saw what was going on, they're like, I got to get into real estate like right now because
Mm-hmm.
my buddy Ryan is crushing it hand over fist, right? And he's not even lifting a finger to do hardly anything. It was that old joke I say, hey, if, during that time period, if you wore a t-shirt that says, I'm a realtor, you got 10 deals,
It's
right?
true.
Because and then so everybody jumped in on that. And now they're in that, oops, now what? All of a sudden I'm only closing. Yeah, like you said, that percentage of those that are really only doing 3 or 4 deals a year,
Mm-hmm.
Total. That maybe this is the correction to correct, the part-time players from the 10 percenters that are,
Mm-hmm.
running well, maybe not running the industry is not a good way to say it, but, that are high level producers and that are doing, business as a business.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that's a correction that we need. I don't know.
I think we do. And I think, or at least I hope, we saw early 2010s, there was that, or mid 2010s, there was that major change to the appraisal industry. They massively changed the requirements to become and remain an appraiser. And I don't know if this was in every state, but I do remember talking about this in Colorado, where it went from, if you were an appraiser yesterday, you're still an appraiser today. If you are trying to become an appraiser, you must have a 4-year degree, and you have to do, I think it was like 1,000 hours now of apprentice work, or whatever the heck you want to call it,
Right.
shadow work or whatever. It really stopped the really bad appraisals, or the ones like, hey, Tom, can you just it's really should only appraise for like 550, but we're under contract at 600. Could you just, here's a 20. Oh, you
Mhm.
and I never did that. This was a change before you and I got into the industry, but there was massive change to how appraisers formed and functioned and who could become one. Is that coming
Right.
for us in our industry? Because I've always had that joke. Heard this early on. I want to say it was Kellen Porter who said this to me. In order to become a real estate agent, you need a pulse and a note from your mom. There you go. You're a
You're in.
licensed real estate agent now. You got this.
Yep. You passed
You know,
the test. It's 70%. You got 70% correct, and welcome to the club.
welcome to the club. And you were required to be overseen by someone, but you and I saw going through our first year or two, and you talk to other people going through their first year or two, were they overseen well? I'm grateful to say I was. Kellen taught me everything
Right.
very early. He wanted me to be a good real estate agent before I was a successful one. And
Professional.
those are the things I tried to impart onto you guys
Right.
when I trained you guys. And for those watching, I trained Tom. I taught
Yep.
Tom how to Tom,
Yeah.
So is that coming for us? Is there a 2-year degree, 4-year degree, apprenticeship situation coming? Now, that's something I really would love to see. Imagine that, of instead of me teaching you the theories in class 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 6 years ago, 6 years ago. Oof. You got to come with me every day. You got to come be with me in the field. And even if I'm taking half the day off and watching the Coach Prime teleconference or something like that, you're joining me on that.
Yep.
Are you joining me for the day? Are you giving me, if you pick up a client, is that my client now? Because I'm your mentor and you're not allowed to participate in a real estate transaction right now. You're required to have oversight,
Right.
which is a loose definition. Are you now going to be legally required to have oversight? You're not allowed to have a deal by yourself, if at all. You pick up a client on day one, you have to give that to me, and I give you a couple shekels of the deal. Yeah.
A
Couple apples.
Smaller bag of apples. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you're not getting that whole apple anymore. You're going to get a slice of an apple.
Yep.
You know,
Here's a taste.
but just a little taste. Just
Yeah.
a little something.
No, and I see that conversation a lot, the barrier to entry and, the threshold to become a realtor is, you know, got crazy. Um, you know,
It has.
and, yeah, so now do we get to that point too where, the licensing requirements are going to be a little bit more stricter and then that varies state by state, right? That's going to vary state by state and what the
100%.
requirements are to get your license. And so, yeah, should be interesting to see
It's
how
going to
all
be an
this
interesting
kind of
world.
develops and yeah, where the real estate world's going to roll into beginning August 17th and where we're going to look back on episode 50 of the broker bartenders and be like, yeah, gosh, remember when we were talking about what this is going to look like, come August 17th, 2024. And, here we are now. And we look back at that and say, that was what needed to happen. Or we look at back at that and say, God, that was kind of a joke. Right.
I think when you add in, and this isn't to take us down any kind of intentional or divided political conversation, but you're adding all of this into during an economic shift in a election cycle in where the world is participating in at least two major conflicts or wars or whatever you want to call them. Any one of those things tends to disrupt the financial markets and the housing market, particularly a election cycle. So what happens when you put all of those things together at once? So you and I start implementing these changes on August 17th. Less than 3 months away is a presidential election, and that always disrupts the market. What is that going to do, if anything? There's so many nuanced pieces
variables
to this.
that are just not even here yet.
No,
So,
and probably more we can't even account for, that we can't even fathom yet. And there's going to be some form or function to this that we're just going to have to figure out midair. I'm like, oh, hell, I guess we did need that left wing.
Yep. Yeah. It was important.
We thought it was important. We weren't sure, but we just, went full throttle and took off and figured we'd figure it out.
Yep.
I think there's going to be an element of, use one of our favorite discussion points of, there's going to be some maverick to this. It's just going to be out there and, Green Range, go.
Yep.
Yep. I look forward to that,
Yep.
So,
well, as always, appreciate the time today. So, again, if there's going to, and we'll, if you want to submit questions or your thoughts or anything like that on our Instagram page, just go to @thebrokerbartenders on Instagram. Follow us. Shoot, comments in there, some thoughts on where you kind of think this whole thing is going to go, questions, stuff like that we can always kind of follow up on. We invite that opportunity for people to participate. And then as we, go along, we'll have, SMEs, subject matter experts that will have, join us on these discussions. So other than that, just want to say cheers as we look forward to the next one. But yeah, if you have any, you need to do, I don't have that.
Yeah, we got to figure out how to do
I need to
a lot
get
of these things as we watch this
thing
back
there.
for ourselves.
Yeah, for sure. So, all right. Appreciate you tuning in. If you were watching, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button on the YouTube page there for us so that we can continue to grow. And we're excited to bring this podcast back to everyone that we can reach out to and have discussions with. And, hopefully we're, creating an opportunity for, people to get better and understand, kind of where we're at now in real estate and kind of go from there. So have a great one, everybody. Thanks again. And we will see you on the next episode of the Broker Bartenders. Take care.
Cheers.
How you doing,